Early on, particularly in my advocacy, one of the things I always started every talk that I would do is with the point that when you've met one trans person, that means you've met one trans person, and everyone's story is different. On the flip side, I think very few people think that my experience is universal or even the norm in the trans community. I think people are pretty crystal clear on the discrimination that trans people face, and they understand that most trans people aren't getting elected to public office. Or I spoke at the convention, speaking at the Democratic Convention. They understand that my experience is unique. Definitely plays with your mind a little bit going into that kind of environment. But at the same time, you also have to just try not to overthink it too. You know, it would be understandable and easy for me to go into exchanges with different members, presuming what they think of me and almost expecting the worst from them. I think if I did that though, a couple of things would happen. One, I'd be in my head totally in those interactions. But two, I would almost give them permission to treat me in a disrespectful or discriminatory way. And if I go into those interactions with a certain expectation for how I'm going to be treated, with dignity and respect, with my humanity and identity affirmed, I have found, one, that even the folks who vote against my dignity and humanity will treat me in that interaction with respect. And two, I force them to have to disappoint me. And so far, it's actually proven to be a pretty effective way of creating a standard, of demonstrating to folks that this is how I expect to be treated. And I'm going to give you the compliment that I expect that you will treat me this way. And that's true in a legislature, but it's also true in a workplace in general, that even if your colleague doesn't respect you, they've got to respect their superior that also hired you. Broader challenge here is not to demonstrate to people how I can't speak for the entire community, but to demonstrate to people that it's not enough to just have empathy or support me. You've got to actually translate that to the rest of the community, that I shouldn't be the exception. I shouldn't be, granted opportunity because I don't seem trans or because I'm not like other trans people. It should be that, the empathy and the support that you see for me is empathy and support that you see for the Black transgender woman who's in our community. I think that's the bigger sort of challenge, and that's the thing that's more front of mind, is how to universalize the empathy, not to distinguish my experience from someone else, because again, I think most people understand that my experience is very unique. The first step here is to make sure that our data reflects the full diversity of gender, that when we are asking people what their gender is, providing options that exist outside the binary, to begin to collect data around non-binary consumers, non-binary viewers, non-binary folks in our society, so that we actually have data to inform those discussions. We know that you can't craft effective solutions if you don't have a clear picture. And so one, whether we're talking about data we're collecting in our day-to-day work, whether we're talking about data that the government's collecting because the LGBTQ community is so absent from that, I think the foundation upon any kind of conversation around serving demographics and diversifying our understanding of what those demographics look like is to actually diversify the data we have and to make sure that we are reflecting that diversity in the questions that we're asking people. And I think that's a first step if it's not already being done. I think it's making sure that we're organically including LGBTQ people, including non-binary folks, in our content, in our marketing, in our advertising, in our remarks, in everything we're doing. That it's not just, non-binary folks exist in this ad that's specifically going on Bravo, but that we are organically including the full diversity of our communities and our broader messaging and our broader communications. I think that's a critical part of designing content that reaches everyone, is to have, the opportunity for everyone essentially to see themselves in that content. The only way to do justice by the LGBTQ community is to simply do the best job that I can for the residents of this district. And because those residents include LGBTQ people, that means working on LGBTQ equality among other issues. But if I'm as good of a senator for them as my colleagues are for their districts, then that'll ensure that while I may be the first, I'm not the last. I ran for office and I'm motivated because I'm incredibly hopeful. I mean, I'm as hopeful as I've ever been in our capacity to bring about change. I mean, I've seen in the last 10 years a profound sea change in attitudes, in laws, in culture. Not enough and not equally felt. What I hope in my career to help instill in other people is a sense of hope that, for as broken as our politics can seem, it has always been in our biggest challenges that we take our most significant steps forward.